Okay, so the live stream should be there. Let me just get rid of that bit. Okay, all yours.
Oh, Tim, go. Okay, ready? Shall I just give a brief introduction?
Sure, let me just get those bits up.
Right, welcome everyone to the Risk and Assurance Committee. I'd like to introduce Bruce Robertson, who's our new chair. So we have Alistair Plummer online, Councillor Alistair. Tim Langley is our roading manager. Tim, we can't see your lovely face.
Yeah.
And so we have Amy, who you
Yes.
met, Daphne, you just
Yes.
recently met. We have Jacques from Audit New Zealand. We have Amanda in the corner, and we have Paul and Melissa Weston there. So I think that is everybody who. Do we know about that? If Martin Connolly is coming to the meeting?
I just checked with his EAH is at lunch. I just checked with the ex-team and they were
Would you like me?
Would you like to say? We'd like to know if he is coming.
So could I just confirm, I do have a quorum?
Yes, we do.
Do we have a quorum with only 2 councillors?
Three, because Bruce is a member
I
of
think
the
I
committee.
would hopefully count as an appointed member of the committee as well.
Okay, does that give us a quorum?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, we did.
Okay.
So thank you for that. It's a slightly odd situation where we're showing a meeting and it's my first chance to meet you all. So I'm very grateful that you are firstly here. Secondly, we'll work through the agenda. I suspect while part of my CV says I chair a lot of meetings, I will need to find ultimately South Wairaka way of managing a meeting here. So Amy, I think you've given me an approach. If I don't follow it properly, you have got all grounds to say, Bruce, let's do this properly, and I won't be offended. So please do it. And look, you can see I refer to myself as Bruce. Very happy to call Bruce. I like the level of informality while also doing the real business. But if we used to talk to each other as councillor or member, that's absolutely fine. I'll go with it. But I'm certainly not offended if anybody, including staff, call me Bruce. That's what I was christened and somebody who called that.
Well, Bruce, I can tell you, I prefer Alistair than councillor.
Okay, mate. Well, we're on to a ripper start then, aren't we? So that's
as all the South Wairaka staff probably know.
So that's superb. So very keen that we start on that basis, and actually we've got a fair bit of work to do. So I'd rather we focused on getting onto that work. This is very much a meeting of discovery with me. I would probably somewhere down the track, and I'm looking at you, Karen, partly Amy, would be very keen that perhaps in a different circumstance we have a chance, perhaps just for me to give us a stronger lead with, as your new independent chair, what I would like to try and achieve. But that would be partly informed by how we go today, and give you a sense of where I think the process should go. I'm conscious that I've got in front of me a karakia. What's convention? Do I invite somebody to say that, or do I have to say that?
You can invite.
Pardon?
You can invite.
Well, who is used? Would somebody be prepared to leave in the karakia, please? Thanks, I appreciate that, man. That's kind of.
I did it in the finance one earlier on.
Oh, okay.
It's quite nice. One ear to Takatu, 1 ear to Hingango, to Tinana, to Wairua, to Nakau, to Mahia, to Watia. 1 ear to Rangi, to Yohane, to Puppet, to Takitone, to Hunge, who am I name? Ki Tura Marangi, Ki Tura Manuku, Ki Tota Rangimaria, Ki Roto, Ki Tina Otatu. Tura Fiti Whakamawa, Ki Tina, Humie, Hue, Ta.
Yeah. Thanks, Paul. That's great. Right, well, we've obviously cleared the meeting open, but I do appreciate the fact at the start of the meeting, and I think actually, I got it right, Amy, the last minutes are of September last year. I think it was September last year, so it's quite a while for the committee. This is the first committee meeting for the new triennium, let alone for a significant period of time. So it's great that we've got the show on the road, and we'll look to pick that speed up as we go. Amy, we're recording the meeting, as I think we're all well aware. you folk are more aware of the health and safety processes around here, so I'll follow somebody out if I have to, short of an earthquake, which I guess I drop and hold. Thank you, Paul, for the karakia. I think at this stage, we need to probably sustain an apology, at least for lateness, from Martin. Sorry, there was another councillor that I think you said you were calling Melissa that wasn't going to be here.
Councillor Eland is away, he's out of
Right.
Councillor Macaulay.
Right, okay.
Harry also gave his.
That's right, sorry, Harry was, I've already received that. So look, well, I'll deal with the elected members. So look, I'll move from the chair that we sustain those apologies. Can I have a second, please? Thank you, Melissa, appreciate that. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, it's carried.
Very nice. What's
Yeah.
Every matters coming up that we need to declare a conflict of interest for. No? But just for reference, and I realised I haven't actually only given you my full list. I have a broad advisory and governance work across the country. That does include the Wellington area. Primary one being that I chair the Audit and Risk Committee for Wellington City Council. And the other responsibility in Wellington is I chair the Audit and Risk Committee for MPI. I don't think, looking at either the agenda today or what I would anticipate currently to be the agenda going forward, either of those affects us here. But I, for want of record, just indicate that that is the situation. I don't think we've got anybody from the public. Are you seeking some form of participation other than this thing? Okay, thank you, Daphne. Appreciate that. Welcome being here. I'm always happy that we have public at a meeting, particularly as much as this. And look, for the record, as a process and principle, I'm keen that we have as much as we can about meeting, by the way, in public, even though, rather than in public, except albeit it's unavoidable. There will be some matters that we have to have in public. So didn't be informed of any extraordinary business. Well, matters arising from previous minutes, we probably should actually look at those previous minutes and actually adopt them. I presume would be the right. They've been adopted, have they? Of course, yes, in terms of it. Are there any matters then, Amy, rising from those minutes or members that you want to raise that we should consider in terms of action? No? I had a read of them. They look pretty good to me. Not that I was here, so I can't say they were accurate, but I presume they are. And it looked like they gave me a sense of where things were at, but not actually being action. So there is nothing there to raise, which is tremendous. So we're going to move on to the first item, which is the annual report. I'm about to say adoption. It is actually about the adoption, but the actual adoption is a wee bit away yet. It's planned for the 7th of June. Karen, I wonder before I launch into where I'd like to go, I wonder if there's anything you'd like to do in terms of the paper and introduce it, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So on the 23rd of November, we had a workshop with councillors to introduce a draft annual report, and we explained to councillors how that annual report worked and what was the main content, and provide some assurance of the process around audit and the financial results. So when we presented the draft annual report in November, it was still subject to change, and some of those changes have since been included in the financial statements. So it's important to note that the changes we made were minor last-minute adjustments to the financials. They were not material, and they were simply just last-minute adjustments that we have agreed with Audit New Zealand to process. So we made that quite clear at the workshop, that we just had a few things that needed tidying up. Since that workshop, we have finally completed the final audit on the 26th of April, and the final markups and adjustments to the annual report have just been recently included. It's important to note that the annual report is still open. It's not closed until it's adopted. So some of the changes, recent changes, included things around the change of Three Waters reform and change in name, change of results. So today we bring to the table a current draft with all of the changes requested by audit and all financial statements and funding impact statements updated as a result of the audit. I think that's pretty much where we are in terms of the process, which we'll probably go through shortly. Is that the adoption date is set for the 7th of June, and we are planning to have a workshop with councillors before that date to give reassurance around the content of the financial statements and the changes that were made as a result of audit, which were minor. The audit opinion will be reading for the 7th of June, and at this stage that's unmodified, which means that there's nothing material to be noted in the audit. Any questions?
Are we distributing our copy?
Yeah. State, who else that have access to a copy? He doesn't.
It's been emailed.
They were sent
Yeah.
last night.
Oh, they? Right, good. Elsa, you're on mute, by the way, mate. You need to.
I'm sorry, just what this is now available, the draft is now available to the public, or it will be released publicly once adopted?
It will be released publicly when it's adopted on the 7th of June. So it's still open and it could be subject to change.
Just to know that papers presented at this main meeting are in the public report. Yes. So we've been uploaded to this meeting. Yep. So it is available in the meeting notes.
Thank you, Karen. I appreciate that. So we are in a position where we're close to the. So if I can back up a wee bit of theory around the role of the risk committee. The role of the audit and risk committee starts with its terms of reference, which is essentially to run the relationship with our colleague here, Jacques, who is the opinion giver from Audit New Zealand on behalf of the Office of the Auditor General. And it's the role of the risk committee to marshal through the delivery of the annual report. Now, clearly, if we haven't get to September, it arguably isn't a good job, and I don't mean that unkindly. It just reflects the circumstances that we have found ourselves in. So today, there's a level on which the Audit and Risk Committee is reclaiming ground, so that it can form a role, which is that at the meeting where it's planned to adopt the annual report, it should have, council should have a recommendation from this committee that it recommends the adoption of the annual report. It recommends that the mayor and the chief executive sign the statement of responsibility. And I wonder, Karen, if somebody could find for me the page number of that statement of responsibility. I can tell you now it's page 12, and it might be useful. Now, Alistair, you do have this online?
We sent it to you.
Yeah, brilliant. I just want to make certain that I don't exclude you from the conversation. Technically, it's signed, but you know, it's obviously using something. But page 12 needs to be a statement that we consider. And the other thing that's important from Jacques' perspective is that we recommend that the mayor and the chief executive sign the letter of representation, which has been included in your agendas. And they, and we come back to why they're important, but they are important representations that are being made to the auditor that we've essentially made available all information and provided you with that process. Now, ideally, the risk committee would meet reasonably close to, in this case, the 7th of June, which is when council, as you said, Karen, is scheduled to meet next when it can adopt the annual report. That is occurring right at the stage, and Karen, as you and I discussed last night, we think it would be valuable for all councillors to have the chance to have a short workshop somewhere between now and the 7th to look at this annual report fully. And that is because we are in a slightly not unique, but a problematic situation where the report is only now available for adoption. And yet for some of you, you were not on council when essentially the year we're reporting on concluded. And certainly in discussion with Martin, he wasn't the mayor, and yet he's been asked to sign the letter of representation and the annual report. So we are in a slightly extenuating circumstances, not unique, but it's just to be careful through that process. So from here, we're going to have a short consideration of the annual report itself and the letter of representation. We're going to then have a yet to be defined day, I suspect, at this stage, Karen, for a workshop so that we can then move and support council in terms of its adoption. Alice, you got a question?
Yeah, you raised the very issue I was going to ask you about some guidance on, and that is that nobody on this committee, with the exception of me, were here during the process of that. And I'm pretty much talking officers as well. I think, Karen, you came halfway through. So,
No, not even that.
so, you know, in all intents and purposes, what we're doing here is, you know, it's a historical document, which even if it was completely wrong in every sector of the imagination, there is nothing that could be done about it, because none of the people in this room, with the exception of me, had anything to do with what went on 12 months ago. So whilst we've got that funny position that not only we delayed in the annual report, we've got a whole new council trying to sign off an annual report that had nothing to do with it. So I'm just sort of thinking to myself, what is the purpose of this discussion, looking at that annual report where people have no governance oversight of the activities that occurred or anything of that nature. So next year would be different. This year is a confusing one, and you know, it's largely the mayor could write whatever he likes because he's not accountable for it because he wasn't there.
And that's a fair point, Alistair. And Jacques and I, and indeed Karen, have had quite a useful discussion already prior to the meeting about actually the delay. And I mean, there are 30 local authorities that aren't being signed until now. So across the country. So we're all faced, Alistair, with the same situation. I think there are two things here that I'd just like to say in response to your very wise point. One is, you're right. In some sense, the timing of the release of the annual report makes it somewhat redundant. I mean, we're more worried about the annual plan going forward, right? Because that's actually most relevant to us as a community. Having said that, there is a very important point that we keep on a regular basis our finances and our performance. I better say we underline them on a regular basis called annually, and the importance then of Jacques being an external party looking at these and saying, yes, based on our work, these reflect the actual performance. Because in the long run, the quality of, for instance, of our annual plan, in part, is based on the fact that we have a confirmed and an externally confirmed opening position. And that's what this report gives us. The second thing I wanted to say is, yes, you're right. And you're quite right. I mean, even I wasn't here, obviously, last year, and I'm being asked as your appointed member to be part of the committee decision to adopt something which I had nothing to do with at all. Here, I'm looking for reliance on Jacques, who has looked through the information, and his role is to say, well, these accounts do reflect the position that actually, you know, we knew. So that's important in terms of process and procedure and the record left for South Wairarapa. Its relevance, that's a good question.
Could I just agree with you on that point? And Jacques, I think to me, given that everybody around this table is new, with the exception of me, the only thing that really has any material impact upon anything this committee is doing, or indeed this council is doing, is saying, have we confidence in Audit New Zealand to say that this is correct? Because we can't go back and review what we had nothing to do with. So
Yeah.
it is very much to me the one-page statement of Audit New Zealand that says, this is all good, sign it off, thanks very much, and we start again.
Isn't that important?
Otherwise we're wasting our time and you rightly point out, we're in the middle of an annual plan process, which is probably reasonably fraught with conjecture around the community. And I don't see that this having another workshop for council on something that they had absolutely nothing to do is going to add any benefit to anything. Maybe a workshop next year on the annual report that they have been responsible for actually delivering would be good. But I can't see the value in it when council is already under extreme pressure now with an annual plan and a long-term plan about to start, and as we're about to find out, representational review and all the other things that we've got to do. This is, as I said, this is largely an historical document, and I see Martin's just walked in, and make the point very clearly that, you know, there's nothing he could say about this report that carries any validity, because none of us were there with the exception of me. So I think we should just question audit and then move on. I don't know what everyone else thinks.
In many ways, I like your point, Alistair, but my critical need here is that we take all council with us, and indeed those that have to put their name to it, which is Martin and Harry, are comfortable that they can sign it off. Because the representations actually are important. If we cannot sign off the letter of representation, Jacques, you can speak to what you do, but I'll tell you what he will do. He'll disclaim the annual report, and we won't be able to represent these as being the position of the council. So we're in that sort of interesting ground, aren't we, where it's needed that we sign these things off for good reason, so Jacques can do his thing, and then we have for the community a finally externally agreed or reviewed position or validated position, which is so important for us going forward for what we know is the real stuff at the end of the plan. So, Alistair, you're raising a good point. Do we need a workshop? And perhaps we can discuss that just a wee bit later. What I would like us to do is to just spend 5 minutes again looking at the annual report. I'd like us to then look very quickly at the letter of representation, just what's inside it. I would like to ask Karen a question after that, given you're only been partway through it and we haven't got Harry here. You know, what assurance does management have that the representations in the letter of representation can be attested to by the majority of people that weren't even here for the year? That would be reasonably important. And then before we move to the resolutions, I would like to ask management leave, because I believe it's important that Jacques and the committee have a chance for 5 minutes talking, as is normal between the auditor and the elected members, and dare I say the appointed member of the committee, before we pass any resolutions. So that's what I'd like to do. So Martin, welcome.
Thank you, Bruce.
Actually, sustained your apology.
Thank you very much.
It's going to be for lateness, so I'm sure we can correct that in a minute, saying that's actually for lateness. So that's fine. Look, I just wonder, Karen, if we could look at the report itself, is there anything in particular that actually the committee should be aware of outside of, you know, all these bars shouting? We know that we're going to get an unmodified audit.
Thank you, Bruce. I think the first thing to note is that there were some changes around the previous report, which we talked about, and that was put on as the entire balance date and some minor wording. In terms of the financial statements, the previous copy did not have the revaluations included and some minor adjustments to the financials. By and large, the financials have not changed. The financial position is very close to what we presented earlier. In terms of the non-financial bench KPIs or performance indicators. That was a new piece of work for us this year. We hadn't previously looked at some of these indicators or presented them before in the annual report, because these came about from the long-term plan on the previous year's annual report referred to a previous LTP. So that is probably the most significant change in this document, is that the non-financial KPIs are very different to previous year's KPIs. So, and we've presented it very differently as well. The funding impact statements, which is for each significant activity within the organisation, they are still the same in terms of presentation. Those funding impact statements just demonstrate the money applied and used to do various activities. There was nothing of significance that I feel I need to point out, other than that there were some very minor changes to the financial results from where we presented last time. The financial prudence benchmarks are still the same. Mm-hmm. They will be revised and reviewed as part of the LTP.
Just point me,
yes.
what page are we on for those? Sorry.
There
we go down there.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, Karen.
No, that's okay. Now, Jacques and I have.
Sorry, what page did you say, Karen?
Page 52.
For the financial prudence benchmarks, they still remain the same as previous annual reports, and they will be reviewed as part of the LTP process. And they will also be reviewed as part of the financial strategy. So there are no real significant changes to the document from previous years, other than we've represented the non-financial changes and talked about some significant areas of change around reform. And the rest of it is purely accounting and technical information. Now, Jacques and I have worked on this document probably for the last 6 months on and off. We've done multiple versions and it's been through audit many times. So I'm very comfortable with the systems and processes in place and the accuracy of the financial statements.
Good.
And I have no concerns, and there were never any concerns raised during the audit about the validity of our information.
So that's really helpful. Thank you, Karen. That's very insightful comments, which helped me a lot as a new person. So our role is actually to say, the critical thing, Alistair, goes back to your original discussion. Assuming, and we'll hear from Jacques, we're going to get an unmodified opinion. We now have information we can do analysis of. Because we're already looking at this, at those required financial benchmarks, or indeed the performance in the primary financial statements. It gives us a solid base to be thinking about our financial strategy. And I mean, it's interesting because at a very quick glance, all of about 30 seconds, there is a meeting of the balanced budget test. But when you go to your indicators, you can see when you look at the rates increase affordability, how it was achieved by being outside our indicators with a, what does it say, 27.7% rate increase versus a planned one of 5.7. So it shows how we've done it. So it's valuable information, and I take your point also that if I was to then look at the non-financial indicators, KPIs, as you called them in the back part of it, I'm getting an idea about the performance of the organisation. So that's really helpful. Can I just, so are there any questions then, I mean, about this? The question will be ultimately, we've got to come back to, do we want a workshop on this, or can we take it and just leave it and move on to the 7th we're doing to adopt it? Is there any comment, folk, from a quick look, Melissa, Alistair, that you'd like to raise about the report as it stands at the moment?
No, there's nothing.
Sorry. I'm sure here's your Martin. Alistair?
So, I'm comfortable. Look, I've listened and as Karen's talked us through this and the adjustments that have been made, I'm very comfortable in the audit report. I think gives a pretty good indication of where we were and the challenges that faced us last year and how we overcame them, and where we are going forward. I think it sets a very good starting point for what we've had to do this year.
Thank you. Martin, was there anything you want to add?
Well, I was going to ask you, Bruce, you said one option was a workshop, but there were others. What would your advice be?
Look, I'm the newbie, the newest on the block.
Right.
So really it's a question of what and Alistair's, raised a very good point that, at least in this committee, he's the only one that's been here the whole time. So clearly more comfortable with the numbers than perhaps those that are new here.
Yeah.
We're very, you can see the draft opinion here and it's unmodified. So we've got an annual report which meets the first test that we need, which is an external party is going to sign off and say these are true and fair. And that's in the long run, the primary issue for us as a risk committee is to get to that position so we can say to council, these represent our performance last year. It then gives council the chance to, in the way that I was perhaps raised very quickly there, the chance to analyse its actual performance, because we know Jacques has got put his name on it. So I'm comfortable whether in fact it's do you need a workshop or not.
Okay, so as another person who has to put a signature to it, I suppose I need to be reassured that we have made proper inquiries to make sure that we've covered the things we should be covering. Get the assurance that somebody who was not there can safely do.
And I'd like to do that by now going to the letter of representation. Right. Okay. But I think my point is the critical thing for us is to say to council, we know that through our discussion with the auditor, which we get there. Sorry, Jacques, I'm holding you out here, mate. That actually this has an unmodified opinion. Yeah. And that's actually really important because we then know this is reliable. When we look at the indicators, we can see how we've done it, and we know that essentially it's materially correct. We've got a sound basis looking at the current year and the years ahead of us. So let's go to the letter of representation, please, which is also attached in the agenda paper. And this reflects indeed the primary challenge for you, Martin, personally. Obviously, because it's looking for representations, which I characterise, and Jacques, I welcome your input, but essentially Jacques is asking us to say we have provided him with everything he needs in the way of information to be able to make due inquiry and form his opinion. We haven't held anything back. Okay, that'd be fair enough, Joe? And he's asking us to say, I want you to sign that first, and then I'll sign mine. And it's quite reasonable. If I was in his shoes, I would want it. So while he's had the chance to work with Karen over the last 6 months, while he's had the chance to look at our records down in the great old-fashioned strong room down there, or wherever it is on the cloud somewhere, this is the final check that we are prepared to say, Jacques, we have given you everything. We've held nothing back. So what it's recognising is that our role is to, first and foremost, prepare this in good faith. We ourselves are trying to, we ourselves have prepared this on the basis of fairly reflecting to our community our performance. That's both financial and non-financial. So we put best efforts into this, and Karen has. I'm convinced of that. Okay, that's the first thing that we have to show. If you were to go to page, I think it's page 6 of our agenda, and it's about the second page of the letter, you start to see then that the letter of representation starts to look for some specific representation. So the first line, we confirm that all transactions have been recorded in our accounting records. So we're not holding back expenditure, for instance, which might show a worse current surplus. Or we're not hiding revenue for whatever reason. It's to be honest, it's as bold as is almost as that. Then if you move down the page, you will see, I'll get my head to the right place here. Sorry, it's saying that we've made all the relevant disclosures, but if you go to page 8, it's asking for specific representations around, we provided the information, he's had unrestricted access to staff to ask questions. We've disclosed what we see as the risks. If there has been any matter of fraud or irregularity, we have disclosed that to Jacques, so that he can make an assessment of it. As far as we know, we have complied with the law, and if we haven't, we've told Jacques. Again, on the basis of presumably as elected members, we would know if there was any significant non-compliance. So that's actually really important. And the final one, which is really important, is confirming, or asking us to confirm, and actually only we can do this now, but on the 7th of June, is the representation that says we will be a going concern for another 12 months. Okay, and that is that we will have sufficient income to meet our payments for 12 months. Which brings, by the way, the annual plan and shut face. So that is what is important here. Now, Karen, I'm just wondering if I can come back to your last comment, which I think was heading us towards the letter of representation, that you were comfortable that these representations can be met by council in terms of what it's provided, Jacques. You are correct. I need to get that in a bold and clear.
I just would like to add to that, though. I wasn't hearing that financial.
Yeah.
Chat. That doesn't excuse us from not understanding and reviewing it. So it's just that only Alistair was here at that time. So, but this is a normal audit process, and this set of accounts, and it is technically correct and demonstrates the strong internal controls and financial management of the organisation. So yes,
Right.
no problem.
Martin, given you've got your name at the bottom, yes, questions you'd want to raise in relation to this letter, which, by the way, I'll step past the statement of responsibility, but it's not particularly significant different.
Well, I mean, I think it is interesting that both Karen and myself are strangers to the year we're talking about. Karen at least has the advantage of having the computer as her, to actually discover what the transactions actually say. And maybe I can just ask a question of Jacques, if I may, which is in relation to similar sized entities, etc., and your experience. Was there anything at any time that gave you cause for concern?
So certainly nothing that gave rise of concern. I mean, the delays that we've experienced was due to resourcing impacts and some minor sort of things that we worked through with council, but ultimately, as Bruce has alluded to, the draft opinions, and they're proposing an unmodified opinion, which means that we're comfortable that the financial statements and performance information is a true and fair representation. And similar to you, I certainly wouldn't be putting my name to something if I wasn't comfortable with the work that underpins the position to get to that opinion.
And maybe if I could ask a question of Alistair. I don't know if you can hear me, Alistair, but hoping you can.
Yeah.
In respect of any of the matters that we've considered and talked about, is there anything that doesn't ring true and accurate to you?
No, look, I've just raised my hand to make a comment, and I just wanted to commend Karen and the financial team and our leadership team. I think it's got to be extremely difficult to come in halfway through a financial year when two critical staff members have left with very little handover notes, very little what I would consider normal practice in an organisation, and to come in and to be able to pull this together, Karen, I think is a huge testament to your abilities and your staff's abilities. So I'd just like to say very well done. Not an easy thing to do. You know, and I think that needs to be on record that, you know, you did come in halfway through this very difficult period in our time. So well done.
Thank
So
you.
hopefully, Martin, that, you know, hopefully that, you know, you're comfortable. I think that we are probably in a position where I am significantly more comfortable with the information coming out of our finance team now than ever before in the last 3 years that I've been in there. You know, I don't feel I have to question Karen once or twice or 3 times to get an answer and then only find out that it's wrong later on down the track. So well done, Karen.
Brilliant, Alice, that's very helpful. Anything else that you'd like to raise? Martin or Melissa? Okay, so we're getting that sense of comfort. Now, it is slightly odd, as I say, coming back to the situation which is so correctly put. I would like us to ultimately have, and Jacques, I wonder whether firstly, before we move to a situation of just time with you, for the record, is there anything more that you'd like to add about the audit or the clearance of these financial statements at this point?
There's nothing more to add, to be honest. I think everyone's well over what the challenges and delays were. Ultimately comfortable with what's presented here to the committee today.
Okay. So, Amy, I'd like to do something which I hope you agree with me. I'd like us to adjourn the meeting so that I could have time just with the committee and Jacques. If you take staff and Daphne about 5 minutes, just to have a chat with Jacques in the sacredness of the council room without staff and public present. And then we will re-adjourn and consider the recommendations that go with the. Let's take it up.